Hello, everyone. Welcome to the ATBC panel discussion about how to apply to grad school in the US. My name is Natalia Umaña, and I'm an assistant professor at the University of Michigan. I'm also the chair of the Early Career Scientist Committee of ATBC. Today, we have a great group of panelists who are willing to share their experiences and also happy to answer all your questions about grad school. And I'm going to introduce now my co-host, Dan Gorsonsky. Dan, do you want to introduce you?
Sure. Thank you, Natalia. Hi, everyone. My name is Dan. I'm a fourth-year PhD candidate at Rice University, working with Dr. Lydia Boudreau. And so today, we're just going to tell you all a little bit about the experiences that we've had applying to grad school and hopefully give you some helpful suggestions for how you, as someone who is potentially interested in applying to grad school, can go about doing that. So, okay, so we can get started. Again, we're the Association for Tropical Biology Early Career Scientists Committee, and we'll be talking to you about how to apply to grad school in the US. So the first question, which is most important probably for deciding about grad school, is why you want to go to grad school. So two of the probably main types of grad school you've heard about in ecology and conservation. The first one is a master's, which tends to be more practical and skills focused, and then will be around like 2 to 3 years. And then there's the PhD, which is another option. And that is more research focused and more expertise focused. And that is sort of a more independent type of research experience. And then that tends to be 5 or even more years. So you spend a lot more time in graduate school doing that. Also, as a side note, this session is being recorded and it will be posted later. And just so you all know about that. Okay, so just quickly, this is going to be just a quick presentation, and then we're going to go on to the panelists, but I'm just going to give a few sort of key steps in the process of applying to grad school, and then some tips for each of those steps along the way. So first, starting off, getting yourself in the best position to apply. The first and probably like most important thing, especially for your own sake and knowing that you want to go to grad school, is to be sure that you get some sort of research and field experience. So yeah, like if you haven't tried research, it's like hard to commit to a 2 to 5+ year degree. So would totally recommend getting that first. And now there's a bunch of different ways that you can get this research experience because everyone's background is different, obviously. But if you're at an undergrad university that offers research experience for undergrads, you can do that. You could do a master's degree before doing a PhD to get a more rigorous research experience. And then there's also a lot of options working as a lab or a field technician. And so I have a couple links here that have some job opportunities that are regularly updated as new opportunities come around. And I'm going to post this PDF in the chat afterwards, and you all can download it and look at those links more closely if it's something you're interested in right now. I would also recommend making connections with your instructors and your supervisors in undergrad or your master's or whatever schooling that you're at currently. This can be really helpful for connecting you to their network of other scientists and researchers who are potentially looking for graduate students, and then also is very helpful in providing letters of recommendation. But we'll get back to that when we talk about the application process itself. And then read papers. For sure, reading papers, knowing what scientific literature is out there, knowing the kind of stuff that you're interested in is all super important for making the best decision about getting into grad school possible. In addition, a lot of times when you're applying to grad school, you're going to have to talk about ecological or conservation research with your potential advisor. And so if you can have just like a few papers that you know really well and pull those out in conversation, I think that tends to be pretty impressive for professors. And then a sort of a bonus point is if you can, before applying to grad school, attend a conference or get connected with a professional society like the Association for Tropical Biology and Conservation. So good job on that. You're already there. So the next step then, once you've gotten some experience and you know that you want to go to grad school, you're familiar with the literature, the next step is identifying potential advisors. So the first step in that is just knowing what kind of research you want to do, what makes you curious, what really like drives you to do science, because 2 to 5+ years is a long time to be focused on one project or one like type of research. So you got to make sure that it's something that you really want to do. And then also think about the system, because sometimes that's like something that is really important for certain people, or like if it's about an accessibility thing, like there's all sorts of stuff, considerations to think about with that. But basically, starting from this position where you're thinking about what you want, that's the easiest way to then be looking for a potential advisor. So once you know your interests, you can look for the advisors who do research that fit those interests. And there's a whole bunch of ways to do that as well. You can ask your current instructors or mentors. So going back to what I was talking about last slide with making connections with your instructors. You can find professors on papers that you really enjoy. You can look at the senior author, which is usually the person who's the last person on the paper, tends to be the principal investigator or your potential research advisor. So you can identify some professors of interest that way. Ecolog, which is run by the ESA, has regular postings of PhD programs along with a bunch of other positions. So you can keep an eye on that and see if there's anything of interest. Social media, Twitter is really big for posting different PhD opportunities nowadays. Conferences where you can make connections in person with people who might be interested in advising you. Or if all else fails, you can just Google professor doing research in your area of interest, and you'll probably find a few people at least. Okay, so you've got professors that you're interested in working with, but now you need to talk to them and figure out if it's going to be a good fit for you to go to grad school there, or if you even can go to graduate school there. So the next step then is to connect with these potential advisors that you're thinking about. And usually this comes about as an email, which is usually the first point of contact if you don't know the advisor in advance, or you don't get connected through your advisor or instructors networks. So I have this link here, which gives suggestions about how to go about writing this email, because that can be a pretty intimidating process. So again, you can go and check that out when I post this. So the sort of first thing that you want to ask, if you don't know already, is whether this potential advisor is taking graduate students for this year. So a lot of times professors can't take students every year. So that's like a first sort of filter to make sure that this is like a viable option, basically. And if you inquire and ask a professor if they have an available position, and they either say they don't or they don't respond, probably because they don't have any available positions, just know that that is not like a failure on your part. They're not denying you. It's just they can't take students because funding is like, or having students is so dependent on the funding. So just keep that in mind and don't get too discouraged, because there's going to be a lot of these emails that have, like, even at this first step, that are going to be probably not the way that you want them to go. I would also like try to make this email as specific as possible, and in particular be specific to them and their research, their specialty, and their papers, and show that you're familiar with their research specialty and papers. And then also make it very specific to you by including your general like research experiences, your skills, your interests, and your goals, and sort of try to make a match between what they can provide to you as far as research and what you're interested in accomplishing in grad school. And then also recommend attaching a CV or a curriculum vitae, or a resume if you don't have a curriculum vitae yet. This link here gives advice for how to make a CV, the curriculum vitae, if you haven't made one, and it just gives you a general outline of what sort of things are generally on a CV. So that could be like your education, your conferences, if you've been to them, your awards and honors and stuff like that. So you can check out that link there if you're looking to make that. And then sort of close out the email by express interest in talking further. So this can either be like a Zoom call or a phone call or just like further email communications, just to show them that or give them that opportunity to make another connection and continue talking about it, because you'll probably want to go back and forward a few times to clarify details before actually applying for their PhD program. Okay, so here we're at apply then. So coming from this last slide about connecting with a professor, my first and like general advice would be don't apply to a program unless you've connected with a faculty member who's potentially interested in having you as their student in the way that I just talked about in the last slide. There's a few exceptions where there are programs where students are admitted without having advisors yet. And then you go through something called a rotation, where you go to different labs and test them out and see which one is a good fit for you. But I think in my experience, generally, ecology graduate programs, you come in with a specific advisor that you're going to work with, and you get admitted into the program based on that advisor's approval, more or less. So for most programs, you need to have someone who is interested in working with you and will say, yes, I want this person to be admitted into the program and work in my lab. This is just for your own sanity, but once you've actually started the application process, try to just apply to just 4 or 5 programs, because otherwise it's going to get really crazy with all of the different materials and all of the different interviews and all these things. There's a lot of things that go into applying for a PhD or a master's program. So just like try to keep it limited so you don't go too crazy. And then lastly, just like what you need to apply typically is you'll need a statement of purpose, which is like pretty similar, I would say, to the email that you first sent. You want to make it specific to your experiences and your ambitions, and then also focus on the program or the advisor or the lab that you're applying to, and try to show that you're a good fit for the lab and the program and the department. You also need your school transcripts, so all of your grades from whatever undergraduate institution you've been at, or if you've been at a master's institution, they'll want to see all of it, basically. And then you'll need 2 to 3 letters of recommendation, which is also a big one. So that's going back to the first step, connecting with your advisors and your instructors at your wherever you did your education. They'll probably be the ones who will best be able to provide this recommendation letter for you. So generally, I would recommend that's where you should look. If you are from a academic institution that does not have English as the primary language of instruction, then you'll probably need to take a test of English as a foreign language test before applying as well, just like have that on your radar. But at least for my school, you get an exemption if the primary language of instruction is English, no matter where the institution is. And then two things which are sort of like at this point have become like hit or miss for different PhD program applications is the GRE, which is a standardized test of reading, math, and writing. And so some universities have started phasing this out because it's sort of like seen as not relevant, more or less, which but this isn't the case for all programs. So you might still be required to take the GRE and submit your scores when applying to some programs. And then sometimes there's an application fee. So just keep a lookout for that. Okay, so you've done your applications and you've gotten accepted some places, hopefully, congratulations. Now, the final step is deciding where you're actually going to go. So there's a few things that are like really important to consider just for having a successful PhD or master's experience, basically. So the first and most important thing is to make sure that your advisor is supportive and welcoming, because you're going to be working with them very closely for a long period of time. So I would definitely recommend getting a sense of what their advising style is, what their policy on time off and remotely working is, how they support diversity, equity, and inclusion in their lab, so all of these sort of like interpersonal things are really important for finding a professor. And the best way to do this is to talk to current graduate students and postdocs. You can normally just email them. Usually they're like happy to talk and help you out and give you advice and try to put you in the best position to make a good decision. Also super important is funding. So most PhD students in the United States are funded. So you get paid to do a PhD, and that's super important for living expenses, for rent, for food, all of that. So when making a decision, basically give the highest preference in terms of funding to programs that give you guaranteed 5-year funding. This will like take a huge weight off your shoulder if you don't have to worry about where your payment for each semester is going to be coming from, if you just get guaranteed payment over the whole 5-year period. And then something else to consider, especially if you're focused more on field work, are there any additional funds available at the university level, at the program level, or at the lab level to do field work and get money to do field work, basically, because otherwise you'll have to get those grants yourself, which can be a big drain on your time. And then lastly, for sure, you need to think about the project, because there's a lot of different ways that projects can be determined for PhDs and master's students. You can either be hired on a specific project. That's usually if you get hired as part of a grant, and then basically that's the project that you're going to be working on. But then sometimes you also have more freedom if you're being paid from sort of a different method. And then you can be developing your own research and your own project. So definitely be talking with your advisor and with the other students in the potential lab about what the project is and how much freedom you're going to have in working on that project. And then last and probably the most important is you can get all of this information by visiting some of these, a lot of these programs have a visitation weekend where you can go in person and meet with your advisor and with the grad students in the lab, or just like over email. So that's where you're going to get most of these answers. So just a few final thoughts and tips before turning it over to the panelists. The first is don't be afraid to ask for advice on anything throughout this whole process. We're going to include our emails in the chat. So if you all have any more questions that you don't think of right now during the session, we'll be sure to, or we'd be happy to talk with you more about it. Also, like I'm sure everyone in your spheres, your advisors, your coworkers will be happy to give you advice too, because we've all been here. So then this tip is about, a lot of people are when they think of grad school, they're trying to think about how they can make themselves be the best fit for the advisor and for the lab and for the program, and how you can like put yourself in a position to be a good match for all of these people. But you also like really need to remember that you need to make sure that all of that is a good fit for you, because each person is different. Each person's working style and interest is different. And if you're just going for like the biggest name or like the most prestigious lab or university, that's really not always the best fit for you. And then this is sort of just like more broadly, there's a lot of opportunities for working as a PhD or a master's student out there. So don't be afraid to sort of explore, go outside your comfort zone and just see what's out there, because you never know what's going to stick and what's really going to be exciting to you. And then lastly, don't get too set on one lab or program really early in the process. If there's like some professor that you like love all of the work that they're doing, but you haven't talked to them about being in their lab or being a grad student in their lab, there's like so many steps along that path where things might not work out. So yeah, I would recommend, again, like similarly, keep your mind open and be open to whatever might come, because you never know what's going to be the best fit for you or the best program. And with that, that's all I've got for the presentation. So we're going to open it up to the panelists. I'm just going to introduce them really quick. So Laura, do you want to go first?
Sure. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Laura Toro. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Minnesota, working with Jennifer Powers. I'm originally from Colombia, and I get my undergraduate degree at the University of Antioquia in Colombia. And when I was thinking about applying to grad school, I took 3 years off. I was working in different projects and basically tasting the waters and trying to like see what I really wanted and looking for the right fit for me. That's why it took me so long to decide where I wanted to go.
Awesome, thanks. Marcel.
Hello, everyone. Well, thank you for the invitation. I'm from Brazil. I did my undergrad at University of São Paulo, and then I went straight to master's. And then I took like some gap years, and we can talk more about that. Like at some point, like one of my professors advised me to try to do a PhD in the US, but it took me a couple of years, right, to get it. So I think it was like 2 or 3 years later, I could finally start my PhD. And I went to University of Maryland first. That's when I met Natalia. I spent 1 year there, but then the lab moved to UCLA, and that's where I've been since. And I'm about to graduate now. So after 7 years, more or less. So yeah, that's another thing to consider, right? PhDs can be very long in the US. I think that's all.
Awesome, thanks. Christy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christy Ferraro. I'm a 4th year PhD candidate at Yale University, where I work with Mark Bradford and Al Schmitz. I did my undergrad, or I'm from the US, and I did my undergrad at Boston College. And then after I took a year, I did a Fulbright fellowship, which was an amazing opportunity for me to get some more research experience before I went to grad school. I then did a master's at Vanderbilt, and then now I'm doing my PhD at Yale.
Awesome, thanks, Christy. Mickey.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Mickey, and I'm from Ghana. Currently, I'm a PhD at UC Berkeley in the SPM department, working with Professor Benjamin Blonder. I had my undergrad from Ghana, and then after that, I took some time off to work at a forestry research institution where I was a research tech for a couple of years. And then it was there that I kind of developed more interest in trying to try to identify questions and then develop hypotheses to actually answer those questions. So from there, I had more interest in pursuing grad school. So I went to University of Eastern Finland for my master's. And then after that, I'm here doing my PhD, basically. So that is kind of the trajectory that I took to get into grad school. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks. Ignacio?
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for being here, and thank you to the committee for this invitation. My name is Ignacio Escalante. I am originally from Costa Rica, where I did my undergrad degree in biology, and I also got my master's in biology, studying behavior ecology in those sort of topics. Then I took a few years working in field projects, field education throughout the Organization for Tropical Studies. And after that, I got into a PhD program here in the US at the University of California at Berkeley. And a few years ago, I graduated and I am now a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Wisconsin in Milwaukee.
Great. And Camilo.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you everyone for being here, and thank you also for this invitation. It's been great. So I will try to share a couple of slides. Let me see if technology helps me. So are you guys looking at the slides? Great. So I am Camilo Salamea. I am from Colombia originally, and my journey started in Bogota, where I was raised, and I went for undergrad and master's there at Universidad de los Andes. And that was right now some time ago. And then, let me see how to advance this. Okay. And then I went all the way to Europe for my PhD. And so I did my PhD in France, in a lab in the south of France in Montpellier, but most of my field work was done in French Guiana here in South America, and also in Colombia. And so I want to show this path also to show how it's possible to be in the American system, taking a completely different path. So I didn't do my PhD in the US. Then after that time in France, I moved back to my home country, Colombia, where for 2 years I was a lecturer at Universidad de los Andes and also a lecturer at Universidad de La Salle, but also work in some projects as a research associate at Institute Humboldt. And then after those 2 years, I really realized that what I wanted was to continue in academia. So I started to look for postdocs, and I had the great opportunity to join the Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute under an NSF fellowship, working in collaboration with Jim Dalling from University of Illinois and also Betsy Arnold from University of Arizona. And that was a long-term postdoc. And so that was great because I had the time to establish a long-term experiment in BCI. And that gave me the opportunity to really, publish all the papers that I had from my PhD in France. So PhDs in Europe are sort of short in terms of time compared to PhDs in the US. And so most of the papers that came out from my PhD actually were published after I finished, so during my postdoc. And so that was the first postdoc that I did under the advice of Jim Dalling and Betsy Arnold. And then I was able to secure funds from the Simons Foundation to do a more independent postdoc, still based at the Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute, still working in BCI and the Panama Canal watershed for the next 3 years. And then I decided, yes, definitely what I want to do is to stay in academia. So I applied to tenure track positions. And 2 years ago, I accepted a position here at the University of South Florida, where I am an assistant professor at the Department of Integrative Biology. And since then, I have been also a research associate at the Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute. And here I have some information. Well, actually this, oh, that's a problem, sorry. This address is not working right now. You have to type that www salamealab.com. But anyway, you have my address here and also my Twitter handle if you want to contact me. And I am a plant ecologist. So I work on mainly tropical plant community ecology, but some of the questions that we ask in my lab are actually universal. So if you are interested on doing plant community ecology in other ecosystems, maybe my lab is a good option. I have experience working with species distributions and also the maintenance of biodiversity, and I am mainly focused on tropical forest and tropical trees. And I am also very interested on plant microbial interactions at large. But in particular, I have a lot of experience working with seed microbial interactions. And I am starting new experiments working with mycorrhizae too. And so, you know, plant microbial ecology. And lastly, I am looking for students. And so, you know, this is a little advertisement here, but I am looking for students. So if you are interested on a master's or a PhD, you can contact me and we can talk about opportunities, about ways to move forward into the application. And that's all for now.
Awesome, thank you. Very excited to hear about the PhD opportunity too. Okay, so before we get into the questions and answers, I think Natalia had a quick thing she wanted to say.
Yes, thanks, Dan. I just wanted to mention that for those of you who are in an institution that doesn't offer undergrad research, you can also contact me or contact Jen Bradham, who is the co-chair of the Early Career Scientist Committee at ATBC, and we could try to give you that experience at least online with all the resources that we have right now. So I'm going to post our email address on the chat, and you can email us if that's if that would be good for you. Okay, thanks, Dan. Back to you.
For sure. Thanks, Natalia. Okay, so we can get into the questions then. So starting with this first one, I think, Camilo, this might be best for you. How much prior direct experience in the field of interest does one need to apply to graduate school?
Well, that's a tricky question because you definitely need some experience, but you don't need tons of experience. You need commitment. You need willingness to do the job. And as I guess Dan introduced that very well in his introduction, you need to be sure that you want to go into grad school. And so that's the most important thing. And then you definitely need to, you know, have this match between your own interest and the interest of your potential advisor. And of course, experience in those interests will help. But I see cases in which you don't need to have experience in the interest of your potential advisor to be competitive, right? And so it really depends, but you need to show that you have some experience, and you need to show that you have a lot of commitment, that you really want to go into grad school, and that you have clear goals why you want to earn a master's or a PhD degree. I guess that's an important thing, because you know, in grad school you have highs and lows, and that's important, and you have to be sure about those. And for sure, when you are on those highs, that everything is great, everything is working, you are fantastic, your advisor is the best. But on your lows, things are not working that well, and you need to be sure that you are committed to, you know, overpass those lows, and that's normal. You know, everyone has highs and lows in life, and so I guess commitment is the most important thing. For sure, experience will be important. More experience will be even better, but it's not like I need a year of experience in research to apply to grad school. It's really case dependent for me, at least. I don't know if others can comment on that.
Great. Yeah, go ahead, Ignacio.
Yeah, I completely agree with Camilo on this. And I also wanted to say that some programs in the US, or at least the way the US university system is set up, is very welcoming to interdisciplinarity and collaborations and having people moving from field to field. So for example, in my field, I study animal behavior and ecology, and we have people coming with degrees in anthropology or psychology, for example, or even more training in mathematical modeling or computer science. So lately there's a lot of cross pollination of fields in which some type of experience could be helpful for this. And advisors also have R&Ds are in this situation in which they study, you know, mechanisms of physiology in animals, but they realize they want someone, a new student that has a background in computer science to handle big data, these sort of things. So it's very variable, but as Camilo was saying, just demonstrating background engagement and some like milestones could be very beneficial beyond the experience on the actual field in which you will be studying.
If I can just add a little thing, yeah, what Ignacio said is completely true. And something that you also want to keep in mind is that you don't want to be, you know, a copy of your advisor. You want to have your own, you know, research program and see this as a collaboration, right? So you arrive to a place where you will be collaborating with the PI, but you are a scientist, so you will be collaborating. And so you want to have a different skill set, ideally, that can be complementary to the skill set that your advisor has. And so that is important. And so, and, you know, at least for me at the beginning, I was thinking, well, but, you know, my advisor is really good in this and that, and I'm not. Well, that's not a problem, right? Because the way we build science and we build good projects these days is through collaboration. And you will be collaborating. You will be probably one of the most important collaborators of your PI. And that's the way to see this interaction, I think, at least for me. And so that's important. I totally agree with Ignacio.
Awesome. Thanks, y'all. Okay. So moving on to the next question. Can you or anyone here speak to applying for a PhD post age 40, pros and cons, challenges, etc.? So I know Jen could be able to speak to this. Is there any other panelists think they can take this one, or?
I can also say something, but if Jen want to go first, that's great.
Hey everyone, I'm Jen. I'm the co-chair of the ATBC Early Scientists Committee with Natalia. And I will just give a little bit of a take on this. So first off, I started my PhD late. I'm an assistant professor now at Wofford College in South Carolina, and I didn't start my PhD till almost 30. And my closest friend started her PhD with me at 43. And there are pros and cons. The pro for her is that she actually had children and they were already grown, so she had gotten to spend time with her kids. The con is that she felt like she didn't have enough time to do this project and this research that she loves so much that she could have dedicated her whole life to. So she felt kind of frustrated that she had waited so long to do it. However, there's a lot of positive feedback for starting your PhD after you have some life experience. So both she and I had work experience. We came into the PhD knowing what we wanted to do and what we didn't want to do, which is also important information. And we knew that there was going to be a big commitment. Doing your PhD is a big commitment. It's a big time commitment. And so coming in knowing what that is and having some life experience for how to balance your work and your life and knowing what you're getting into is really valuable. So for anyone who's looking to apply to a grad school or PhD after 40, the 40 is just a number, it's just an age, and it shouldn't matter at all. If you want to do grad school at whatever point in your life you are ready to do it, that's when you're ready to do it. It doesn't matter at what age you are. And I'll send it to you, Camilo.
Yeah, that's completely true. So I can be, I mean, it's impossible to be in more agreement than what you say, Jen. That's completely true. 40 is just a number. So if you feel the commitment, if you feel that you have the interest, go for it. And also something that is true, and I see as a potential positive of applying a little bit late, is that experience also come in a good association with maturity. And advisors will also look for maturity at different levels. And so I really think that age should not be a problem at all. And if you are committed, if you want to go, if you have your career goals clear and doing a PhD or doing a master's, at whatever age is the right path, just go for it.
Cool. Awesome. Okay, so my next question is going to be more general, I guess. And so all panelists, feel free to jump in and give your 2 cents. So what is, I guess, one thing, just stick with one thing that you wish you knew about grad school before you enrolled?
Dan already gave this advice, so it'll be a little repetitive, but when I was applying for my master's, I got my heart set on one place, and then I only applied to that one place, and I am so fortunate it worked out, and I wouldn't change anything. I don't really wish I did anything different because it was wonderful, but in retrospect, that was a very reckless decision because who knows what could have happened. There are a million reasons, you know. The advisor could not have had space. The graduate school could not have had funding. And I didn't know because I was first generation student. I didn't have any clue. I was just like, that's where I want to go. It'll happen. And so I wish I had cast my net a little wider. No, I don't wish I had because everything worked out wonderful. I should have in retrospect.
Cool. Laura, do you have any advice?
I think, yeah, I'll say 2 things. First one, like, I'm glad I met a lot of people that told me that I should like contact current grad students in the labs I wanted to apply for, because like listening and like talking to them and their experiences helped me decide where I wanted to go. And the other one, which I made a mistake when I applied for the first time to grad school, was to not look for fellowships in advance, at least like knowing that I did have some options, even though like I could not get them, but like showing them to the advisors, like saying, hey, even though I don't have any funding, because for international students, it's slightly different and we're more expensive for universities, like showing them a list of like potential fellowships I could apply was kind of like a plus. And they were like, okay, this person really wants to come here. So if you can do that in advance, even though like you're not gonna get most of them, that's a way to show them that you are really excited and you want to join their labs.
Cool. Marcel or Mickey, do you have any advice?
Yeah, I think I did more like Christy too. I didn't apply to many schools. I think it's a trade-off, right? You can't think that you're going to apply for lots of schools, because that will detract from each application, because it takes time and even money, right? That's another thing you should keep an eye on, because I know that some schools today, they kind of like they don't charge fees, sometimes application fees for international students. Depends on the school, but I know some of them. I think as last time I checked, as Arizona or something. Anyways, but yeah, it costs money and it costs time, right? So, and you want to prepare before you apply, so it's a trade-off. But ideally, I wouldn't have applied for only one. I would apply for at least 3 or 2 or 3, right? Yeah, much more than that, it's unfeasible, I think.
Okay, and then what I would really want to add to this is that, to me, I think what I would have thought I knew was how independent it is to actually be when you are in grad school, because if I probably had the time, I would have actually I would have taken a lot of some courses in terms of courses that will help me advance my skills in terms of analyzing data and those kind of stuff, because I realized in grad school though you are working with your advisor, there are a ton of time that you spend on your own trying to figure out how to analyze some of your work. So if you have these tools in terms of analytical tools, like knowing how to use R, knowing how to use these programming languages, to me, I think if I knew earlier, it would have helped me, because during my gap year, I would have actually focused on trying to know some of these languages. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, y'all. So I guess staying with the grad students, next question up is the funding usually enough to pay for the daily expenses involved with being a grad student, or do you need to work as a teaching assistant or something similar? So any of the grad students with that.
I can jump in just to say that I think every school is quite different in what they require and how much they'll fund you. And so one of the first things I would suggest doing is, when you're making your potential list of schools, look up how much the funding is and what the requirements are. They're almost always publicly available in like the PhD student or master student handbook. And then think about the city you're going to be in, because a lot of times stipends will seem higher, but then, they're in the Bay Area, and that's because you really need that higher stipend. So just be sure to contextualize what the stipend is to where you are, and then look clearly at what the requirements are. Most schools that I looked at required some teaching, but that's part of the training. So I saw that as a good thing rather than a negative, because you need to learn to be a teacher to be a professor. So that's what I'll say.
Awesome. Thanks, Christy. So next we've got
Dan, I guess Laura wanted to say something.
Oh yeah, Laura, go ahead.
So something else that could help is, now universities have these like open houses when you're applying for programs. So my program is actually having one in like a couple of weeks. So you can ask current grad students like if like the payment they're getting is enough for living here, because sometimes you ask your advisor and your advisor is gonna be, oh yeah, you're gonna be fine. But asking other people, and also if like you have kids, if the university has any extra support or funding, or at least daycare, so they can help you with all of those questions.
Yeah, and if I can add, just because I think it's an important, if you were lucky enough to get like accepted by more than one school, I think that's the time when you want to negotiate, right? So you compare the package, right? The funding package that they offer you. And because I think, at least from my background, I was definitely not used to do this kind of thing, right? But it's definitely a thing in the US. So if you really want to go to school A, but the funding package is not as good as school B, then you could just like, oh, you see, I got accepted by this school too, and they're giving me this much. Can't you like match the offer or do something better? So that's something really important that we only learn when it's too late, but that's a thing that you can do, right? Okay. Negotiating your funding packaging if you get accepted by more than one school, right?
And if I can add a little bit about that, that's a really good point, Marcel. And I see that from even experience, you know, coming from Latin America, we are not used to negotiate anything. We accept things. But you know, here in the US, you can negotiate things. And so definitely if you are accepted in 2 different or 3 different programs, and you are lucky enough to have that, put everything on the balance, right? And then you can, you know, always be upfront and say things directly, but you can see what is the best option for your career goals, for your, you know, work-life balance and all those things. And I definitely think that what Christy said was really important. It's not the same having a salary in New York City or having a salary in Tampa. Most probably the salary in Tampa will be way lower than the salary in New York City. But that doesn't mean that you will live better in New York City compared to Tampa. And so, you know, all those things need to be in the scale when you are making a final decision.
Can I add a bit to that? Sorry, I'm bipling here, Doc. And what I see here is one interesting thing we can add to this is other source of funding, like for doing field research. There are some organizations out there that may have some money that graduate students can apply to. So it helps with your field work and things like that. So, but it's good right from the start to have discussed with your advisor so that you can set out time to do that. Like Camilo mentioned, we need that work-life balance. You can't just take all your time applying for those things and then part of your time doing your research, and then you have no life left for no time left for yourself. So if you can set out time like that, then you can have a bit of funding to do some of those things that maybe your lab couldn't provide. That's just my 2 cents.
Awesome. Thanks, y'all. Yeah, a lot of different perspectives on that one for sure, because funding is very important. Okay, so a couple people asked this question. Do you think it's worth it to do a master's before starting a PhD? So maybe we start with Ignacio, since he's out of the PhD now. But yeah, if anyone else has either like done a master's before doing the PhD or not done the master's before doing the PhD, like please jump in afterwards.
Great, thank you. That is a fantastic question, and one that unfortunately does not have a straight answer. It might depend on what you want to do. It might depend on the opportunities that you have, the training that you have. A lot of people, I would say, if you are like on the fence, like having doubts about doing a full 5 to 8 year PhD, if there's some spark of doubt, I would say maybe you're in the track of starting with a master's, so you can figure out what research is, how you do it. That would be a good opportunity, and that's actually the trajectory that I did. But otherwise, you can just jump into a PhD too. The one thing I would say here in the US, there's more of an availability of PhD programs and degrees, and even going back to the previous questions, there's more funding to do PhDs than do masters. Again, this varies between institutions and so on, but And one other thing that I would say about PhDs in the US is there's a lot of emphasis on training people that are just coming out of their undergrad, which for us coming from abroad might be different, at least it was in my case, and it's my experience from other Latin American countries. So if you start a PhD program here, you will get a lot of training in classes, in experimental design, in applying for fundings and writing grants and so on. So if you don't have, or if you feel that you don't have a lot of training in those aspects, that will get you on track. Sorry, that was a very long answer to say it depends on your case.
Can I add a little bit to that question? I totally agree with Ignacio. It really depends. And that's the best answer that you can get. And is species specific, is case by case specific. I guess Natalia or someone posted on the chat a Carson paper. Walter Carson and others wrote a paper about applying to grad school. And they talk about that. They talk about the difference of applying to a master's or applying to a PhD. I personally did a master's first and then a PhD. And I did a master's in Colombia and then went for a PhD in Europe. And so the master's was 2 years and the PhD was 3 years and a half. And so, you know, I see that sort of less, you know, more or less like the PhD in the US. But it really depends on each case scenario. And also it depends if you really want to commit 5 years to a relationship with your advisor and with your study model, and you feel that you are committed for that, go for a PhD. But if you are not completely sure about that, maybe 2 years or 3 years master will be better. And I also think that nowadays, there are schools in which you can enroll in a master's. And if the project goes well, and if your interaction with the advisor is good, and you are happy, your advisor is happy, the program is happy, then you can just shift that to a PhD. And so that's something that you can ask your advisor, and you can always see if that possibility is open on the program or not. And if that possibility is open, maybe it's a good option if you're not completely sure about your long-term goals or things like that. And so it really depends.
Laura, yeah, go ahead.
I guess something else that you have to keep in mind is like, I guess in the US, you can go straight from like undergrad to grad school or like a PhD program. But in Europe, in most cases, you need a master's first. So if you want to move to Europe or that's your goal, sometimes it's easier to have a master's and then jump into the PhD, as Camilo just mentioned. If the project goes well and like you have a good relationship with your advisor, you can do that.
Great. Marcel, did you have something?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, if we could add something, I don't know how other schools are, but I know at UCLA, being at a master's program means that you're going to be teaching a lot, right? I don't think there's as much funding for masters as there is for PhD. I don't know, that was my impression. And you can correct me if that's not the case in other schools. And the other thing, I think like if doing a master's in your country before or somewhere else before trying to go to the US, it can help. Like remember when Camilo was mentioning all the commitment, right? That you have to prove commitment. I think a master's is a good way to show that you have commitment with the project, right? And especially if you can get like a product, like a publication or something, because that I think that may help you, may put you in a very good position. So it's not a bad idea to start as a master's and then try to apply for the PhD. But yeah, but Laura is right? So people just go straight. It's more common people to go straight to PhD for undergrad in the US rather than doing the master's. Yeah.
Mickey, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think all the points that everyone has mentioned actually make sense. And then, but in the end, it actually boils down to you individually, because Me personally, I think after my undergrad, I felt I needed more experience before going into PhD. So with that, I felt I should do a master's in order to actually build on the knowledge that I had. And then in the process of doing that, I would also identify what I really wanted to actually specialize. So in so doing, I actually went for a master's program. And to me, I think it actually also broadened my collaborative network, so that when I was about actually applying for PhD, it wasn't something very difficult because I had a broader scale of collaborators that I could actually work with for my PhD. So I think to me, it was much more of a stepping stone where I developed my interest, and then also it made me feel better prepared for the PhD. So it's basically individual basis and what you think would be best for you and your career.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. That's absolutely correct. And then from a practical point of view, doing a master's will help you get the reference letters that you need, right, to apply.
Awesome. Thanks. Christy, did you have anything? Because I know you did a master's.
I did. Yeah. And for me, it was necessary because I didn't have art skills. I didn't have a lot of the skills I knew I needed to do a PhD, but there are people on this call who went straight to a PhD because they had those skills. They knew how to do R, they knew how to do speech, they knew how to set up a project. And when I got out of undergrad, I didn't. So I think, do you feel like you have the skill set to do your PhD? Then don't prolong, because there's an opportunity cost if you do a master's, right? It takes longer to get to a higher paying job. That being said, it can provide background and necessary foundational work if you don't feel like you got that in undergrad. So yeah, there are pros and cons.
Cool. Great. Thanks, y'all. Okay, so to our resident postdoc, Ignacio, I guess, what do you think in grad school made you most competitive for a postdoc, sort of like looking forward to life beyond the graduate program?
Yes, life beyond the graduate program. Let's not forget that it exists both during and after the program and before. But to answer the question, I would say basically what you do in your program is it puts you in a very good position to keep acquiring other opportunities from a practical standpoint. Having papers already out from your dissertation work, at least one, it could be very beneficial when starting contacting postdoc advisors and fellowships, because the interesting / funny / not so funny part of applying to postdocs is just the same process all over again. We could have all these people here and all the attendees 5 years from now in 2026 and have the same panel on how to apply to postdoc. Again, it's roughly the same process. But so contacting a potential postdoc advisor, seeing what are the funding opportunities, and the way that, I guess, maybe broadly, the fact that you have demonstrated that you have learned skills during your PhD and you have put them out there in the form of papers or congress or conference presentations, or your work invested in university service, outreach, teaching, mentorship, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Those are the sort of skills that I would say my experience kind of like put you into that opportunity to get in postdocs. Going back to your original presentation, Dan, the other part is a lot of networking, a lot of knowing what people are doing out there, who has money to hire PhDs. Once you come to the US and you realize how some aspects of the system work, going back to Camilo's point about negotiating, that's where you jump in, and then you see who has money. And actually NSF and NIH publicly advertise, or they show publicly who has money to do postdoc, and you can just look on their website and see, oh, dear doctor, dear professor, I know you have money, so are you looking for a postdoc? So the process is roughly similar, but certainly networking, your progress, and the other thing that I would say is time. Unfortunately, it takes a lot of time to put up the applications. As you all are aware of, putting the applications for grad school is fairly time consuming, and for postdoc is roughly the same. So having some time to plan during your program, to have some time allocated exclusively for career exploration, career preparation, and actually applying and making those contacts will be very useful.
Yeah, hard work and networking. Those are two major take-home messages. I definitely agree with you, Ignacio.
Cool. Yeah. Okay, so then this one, I guess, is for anyone who maybe has experience or good ideas, but on the negative side of finding an advisor, someone asked, how do you identify an abusive or exploitative advisor? What are some red flags? Laura, yeah.
So a red flag would be if their students are taking more than 7 years to finish their PhDs, or like masters more than like 5 years. That's not good. And if you're not even accepted into a program and they're telling you that you have to start like joining them, like doing field work, and you're like, wait, I have no idea. And also just ask other current students how they feel, if they feel a lot of stress every time they get an email from their advisors. If they're extremely perfectionist and like you cannot deal with that, also that's another red flag. Basically, make sure that your personalities match, or you can handle your advisor's personality.
Yeah, Laura's points are really good. It's important to speak honestly. In PhD, students are cheap laborers for PIs most of the time, right? So it's not uncommon to have like PIs like overextending, like, so you probably could finish your project like in 5 years or 6, but sometimes PIs will try to like expand that as much as they can, because you're relatively cheap labor for them, right? So it is important to be aware of this for sure. Yeah.
All
right. If no one has anything else on that,
add something fairly quickly. I would say, in your initial conversations with this person, how you feel, how the communication is going, how much interest this person is putting into getting to know you, into answering your questions, and overall how you're feeling with the interaction could be very, very crucial in determining this point.
I mean, it's a relationship, right? And so as relationships, you have to have that chemistry. That's important. And you see that since the very beginning. I mean, not all the red flags will be evident straight away, but if you don't have that chemistry, probably think if that will be the right advisor for you, I think.
Yeah, I feel that we could talk about this the whole time. It's difficult, right? And I think just like any relationship, it's in good part up to you to put limits in this, right? So, but of course, you as an international student, you be at a vulnerable position, right? So you feel quite vulnerable most of the time. So it's difficult, yeah. So talking to current students or even past students, I think can help. Usually current students, if they're in an abusive relationship, they won't really be honest with you, but you can read between the lines, right? You you can definitely catch that something's not quite right. They won't say like explicitly to you what's going on, but you can catch it.
Yeah, the unfortunate dark side sometimes of working in academia, but yeah, hopefully we're all
I mean,
able to.
of being human beings, I think.
Also true, yeah. More generally, for sure, yeah. Okay, cool. So we have a question about a faculty member who's going to be hiring 2 master's students in the next 2 years. What's the best way to advertise the position? It could be helpful, I guess, if we ask the grad students to go around and just quickly say how you found your position. Like, was it through a collaborator? Was it online? What was your process? And if we want to start with Mickey.
Okay, that's fine. I think with me, when I was ready to actually pursue a PhD, I joined a bunch of listservs. I think I've forgotten some of them, but then I joined a lot of these listservs. And then, so whenever someone posts a position, I look at it and see if it fits my criteria or my interest. And then I just quickly apply to that professor or to that institution. And then also, I was keeping an eye on my emails from collaborators, because some of them would just post in a group email that they are looking for students, and and I think those ones were really good because they were really upfront with the kind of money that they have, and then the kind of interest that they are looking for. Unlike others from the listservs that were a little bit broad, the ones in the group emails were kind of really focused, and I think those ones were also very helpful. And then also, when I went to conferences, I would also kind of make it clear to some of the professors that I met that, you know what, this is my interest, this is where I'm at, and then I'm interested in pursuing a PhD. So if there is any offer, just let me know. So it's like physical communication, checking emails, and joining listservs were kind of the main approach through which I actually landed my PhD.
Christy, do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. For both my master's and my PhD, I found my advisors through just looking on websites of schools, and then oftentimes well, in both cases, the advisors said that they were accepting students, and everywhere that's just how I found people. And as Dan said earlier, reading papers was really helpful. So I just looked at who was writing the papers I was most excited about, and then, or working in systems I was really excited about. And then I just looked at their websites and got their emails. And I think the best thing is to have a really clear website as an advisor. And, you know, what are you looking for students this year? How to apply? You know, what are the resources for grants available? I know it's hard to keep those things updated as a very, very busy professor, but it's really amazing for graduate students or potential graduate students to go to a place and like be able to see all the information about you, what you do, and whether or not you're taking students.
Great. Marcel or Laura?
I have a suggestion. I'm gonna post a link here to everyone. There's Ecolog L, which is free, right? I think you have to register for it, but it's basically an email list, and you get, and I'm sure ATBC has something. I remember ATBC has something similar too. But there are many resources. Like you can look in scientific societies. They usually have like job postings, and that's true for postdocs, for professor positions, but also like for masters and PhD, right? And it's great. So every day I receive like a list of like 20 or so opportunities. I think it's more intense this time of the year sometimes like it's less busy, but right now there's a lot of opportunities there. So please make sure to check that. Oh, I'm gonna post the link.
Can I add a little personal story that probably will say something about this? So I guess Dan already mentioned that, and others in this conversation, but definitely reading peer-reviewed papers help a lot. And so a personal story is that when I was a master's student back in Colombia some years ago, I was reading a paper that I really enjoyed, and I decided, I don't know the authors, I don't know anyone in this list of authors, but I want to contact the senior author. And I contacted that person, and then after a few emails back and forth, I ended doing a PhD with that person in France. And so that works, that's real. And it's a paper that I really enjoyed, I really like it, and I really thought that matched my interest. And I contacted that person, and at the end of the day, I went for a PhD working with that person. So reading is probably one of the most important activities that you can do as a student. I mean, as a scientist in general, right? Don't get me wrong, I'm still reading tons of papers.
So if I could add something, so I found my advisor basically just like talking to my former boss, and he suggested people that were like working in tropical ecosystems that maybe were looking for grad students. And something that might help now, if you want to advertise any positions, like having like a diversity statement in your website or Twitter account, it's totally worth it. Like now it's really important to show that you care and how you care about different issues.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for sharing your stories. Okay, so we're going to move on to another question, which anyone can take, I guess, anyone who has experience with this or knows someone who does. So what would you recommend to people who had bad grades in undergrad, and to those who didn't realize statistics and data science would play a very important role in research?
Then a master's can be the way to go. I really think that if your GPA is low and you don't have a lot of statistical background, then contact an advisor that want to work in collaboration with you, and probably go for a master's, not for a PhD straight away. I think that can be useful.
Yeah, I'll just second that. My undergrad was primarily in philosophy, and so I had no stats background. And when I realized what I really wanted to be doing, I did a year of research through a grant program, and then I did a master's because I was like, all right, I need these skills. This is what I actually want to be doing. So even if you're changing career paths, if you're not an ecologist already and you're like, wow, I've finally come to what I really want to do, and it's ecology, yeah, a master's is a great way to get those skills.
If I may, I think this relates a little bit with that question about the 40s, right? About applying for PhD at 40. And I think there is like a certain fatalism in thinking like there is only one perfect path towards a PhD in the US or something like that, or towards an academic career. And that's not true, right? That's yeah, I've seen like people from all backgrounds like changing areas, or people that took very long gaps and they returned and they still like managed to flourish, right? I think it's all about your current state of mind and where you want to be, right? I think that's what mattered the most.
Yeah, that's a great point. And things change. We've been talking for almost an hour about how to get your perfect application in the perfect program and finding the perfect thing. And that's a all super good advice, and that's a fantastic strategy. And the fact that you're attending this seminar means that you're interested. But also things change. Eventually you go to a place and things change. And let's not forget about that, you'll be moving to a completely different place. And everyone who has had that experience or done research abroad or anything, that's a life-changing situation that might not work out. Or, at the end of the day, you have to remember that it's you and your mental well-being that matters the most, and things might change, and an advisor that looked good at the beginning might not be good a year later, and like things can change. You can just move away from that. Going back to the grades question, I tend to think that grades in grad school don't matter much. So it might be very variable, but what matters, as Camilo pointed, is sort of like the training that you have. So I would say, when I read the question, like grades don't matter, or at least the program that I was, they don't look at the GPA very much. They look at the experience. So if the aspect that you're feeling you're sort of lacking is the training and understanding and conducting those skills, then that's sort of like the training that you might want to get into.
A little addition to that, and that can change from program to program. So it's difficult to generalize here, right? But for some universities in which you have rotations rather than applying to a direct PI lab, GPAs can be a little bit more important. And so, that's also a question that you can ask a potential advisor. How important the committee of selection will, how much weight GPA will have. And I agree with Ignacio. I mean, grades are not the most important factor. It's way more important that you have commitment. It's way more important that you have experience. It's way more important that you want to do a PhD or a master's, and that you have a clear goal why you want to earn that degree.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to throw it to Jen really quick, who has some resources and info that she wants to talk about.
Yeah, so I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that it might not be possible for everyone to do a master's before a PhD. Often there are some funding issues associated with that, or just your lifestyle. And so Natalia and I just wanted to let you know that if you are looking for any sort of research experience or resources for learning data science or anything like that, please reach out to either Natalia or myself. We'll put our emails back in the chat because we have those resources readily available, and we can work with you to give you some research experience if you want to know how a project would work. Obviously, that would be remote, but we're happy to bring you in and kind of walk you through things and give you a little bit of potential research experience or resources to help learn R and data science. And I'll put our emails in the chat right now.
Great. Thanks, y'all. Okay. So we're running low on time. So I'm very sorry that we weren't able to get to all the questions, but yeah, like Jen just said, please send us emails with any follow-up questions. We'd be more than happy to help out. So then I guess sort of our last question that we're going to do is, how early do you need to apply to a PhD? Someone in the chat was saying that they found a few universities that they would like to apply for, but the application deadlines are in December. If you start contacting supervisors now in October, is it too late?
It's never too late, but if you want to apply for next, like fall 2022, you want to contact your advisor, your potential advisor right now. Probably, yeah, I mean, the sooner the better, that's for sure. And you want to give the advisor some time to answer. Sometimes, I mean, very often we are really busy. So if we don't answer your email right away, it's not because of you, it's because we are overwhelmed. And so, you know, take that into consideration. And so the sooner, the better.
And I'll add one more thing to that. We do acknowledge that there are a plethora of questions that we have not been able to get to. And there are some really important questions in there. So what we're going to do is record all of these questions now on a document. And we, for everyone who registered for this webinar, we will answer those questions and then send them back to you. So please don't worry that your question wasn't addressed. We promise we will get you some information and send those back out. And if it's something that is time sensitive, or if you'd like to rephrase your question, or if you'd like more information, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. We are more than happy to field any questions and help you walk you through this process.
And I also think it's a scary process, but it's doable and you can do it. I mean, you can definitely do it, and don't be afraid of the process. I think that's, at least for me, that was my mantra when I was applying for different things at different levels. And you get that when you are applying for grad school, then when you are applying for postdocs, and then when you are applying for tenure track positions. So yeah, you can do it.
Awesome. Do any of the other panelists have last comments?
Don't be afraid to ask for help. Like, everyone is going to be willing to help you. Like, even we that are here right now, we will be really happy to help you, or like someone else, just like current grad students will help you.
Yeah. The last thing I would want to say here is we you should always try to maintain your relationship with other people, not just the people in that particular university or the scientist or your advisor, but you can get help from a lot of other people that you've met, maybe in conferences or things like that. So they can, because when people know you, it's easier for them to invest time in your work than when they don't know you. So the relationships that you've had, if you're able to keep in touch with them or to let them know what you're doing and the challenges you're having, if you can't get help from your institution, you can get help from anywhere else as long as you use the help to work towards your progress. So I think the focus should not only be in your institution. You can get help from a lot of other places and use them for the project and make sure that it takes you to the destination you want to go to.
Awesome. Thanks, Biplang. Ignacio, do you have?
Yes, thank you. Last thing I want to say that it's going to be fine. Don't worry too much. It's a stressful, long process, but it's going to be fine. And things can change along the way. And you have to remember that you have to take care of yourself first and foremost. So things would change. And the other thing, that going back to your initial presentation, Dan, of course, the advisor is super important, but the advisor is, you have all the resources on campus and other professors that will help you. Like, I had my major advisor being a fantastic, amazing advisor, but I had other people advising me in terms of professional development, in terms of teaching, and in terms of career exploration. And so there's going to be a lot of support from you. And that's the question that you want to ask current students and postdoc in that institution, living in that city. Do people with my background have a good experience here? Is there's good support for this? Is this university, does this university handles well visas and international student support? Is this part of the country a good place for me? All those sort of questions are going to become really important, because hopefully you'll be in the university less than 8 hours a day. Or that's variable, but yeah, so that's another important layer that I always suggest people to look into.
Thanks. Mickey?
Okay, one thing that I would also want to add is that never be hesitant in contacting a potential advisor if you do not hear back from them, because I'm a testimony of this because for one of my graduate programs, I wrote to one advisor. I was really interested in his work, but then I never got a reply from him. So I wrote back again. I was like, hey, I wrote to you concerning this and that, and I've never received a reply, not knowing he was on field work for a couple of months. So I got back to him, the message bumped up, and then he's like, oh yeah, I'm interested. Let's really meet and chat. And yeah, that really happened. So I think don't be hesitant to follow up on emails for potential advisors, actually.
Great, thanks. Christy?
Yeah, I just want to say graduate school is amazing. Like it's 2 to 7 years of getting to do whatever you want to do and study whatever you want to study. It's just this amazing opportunity. And like, yes, there are times, as I think Camila was saying earlier, where it's, it's tough. Like there are challenges and there'll be times when you're really struggling. But at the end of the day, like, wow, how lucky are we to get to study whatever we're most interested in with resources that are kind of given to us to just kind of explore these really interesting questions. So like, if that's exciting to you, if the idea of just kind of diving into something for 2 to 5 years or 7 years is exciting to you, this is a good fit for you.
Excellent. Okay, well, thank you so much to all the panelists. It was a great conversation. I'm gonna turn it over to Natalia really quick for closing.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, I wanted to thank all the panelists and also all the attendants for great questions and then great advice. And I just want to remind you that this session will be posted on the ATBC website on the webinar section. So if you want to rewatch or want to share this with other students that were not able to attend this time, this webinar will be posted there. And we will be also answering the questions that were not answered during this session. And I think that was all. Thanks again, everyone. And it was great to having you all here. Bye.
Thank you for this invitation. Yeah, bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.